Are you a mother, father, or you are involved in caring for children? If yes, then listen to Ask the Paediatricians every Thursday by 10 a.m. for insightful discussion on popular child health topics such as dangerous child health practices, immunization, infant feeding, developmental milestones, and so much more. You also get to ask questions on these topics and listen to answers to real-life child health issues by a pediatrician. Ask the Paediatricians Foundation is devoted to health education and information of parents and caregivers of children in the community to support you in raising healthy children. Don't miss Ask the Paediatricians with Dr. Gbemisola because it's informative, educative, and interactive. Ask the Paediatricians Hour, the program for caring parents.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a fresh episode of ATP Hour. I am Gbemisola Boyede. I am a pediatrician, and I am here today to discuss with you another important topic that has to do with health of our children. Ask the Pediatrician Hour is brought to you by Ask the Pediatricians Foundation, a non-profit organization registered in Nigeria but committed to the health and welfare of all children globally, especially in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa, where majority of our children are still dying from preventable causes. So I really want to thank you so much for joining me today on whichever platform you're watching me on Facebook, Ask the Pediatrician Facebook page, groups, or Fresh Waves Radio Facebook. You're welcome. For those listening on Fresh Waves Radio, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you watching on YouTube or on Instagram, thank you so much for joining us. ATP Hour is brought to you every week, every Thursday. So if this is your first time, a special welcome to you. And to remind you that you can watch all the past episodes on the same platform that you're watching right now. So thank you so much. If you want to learn a lot about health of our children, we are really committed to prevention, to promotion of health rather than curative, because as we all know, prevention is always better, and not only just better but cheaper than cure. So please join us every week on Thursdays and learn about the health of your children, about things that you can do to make sure your children are healthy and alive. And if you have any questions about any of this topic that we discuss, you are welcome to post your questions on our Ask the Pediatrician Facebook group. The Facebook group is open 24/7. It is a free group for you to join, and you can post your questions on our groups any time of the day, Mondays to Saturday. And the major difference between our group and any other social media platform is that the answers you're going to get are from the professionals. So these are evidence-based answers, so you can always take them to the bank. So thank you so much for joining me today. And last week, from the 24th of April to the end, was what we tag Immunization Week. Yes, Immunization Week. And so we've been talking about immunization all week. We've been promoting immunization. And so today, I'm also just going to talk about immunization. It is something we have to talk about all the time. And I'm actually going to be giving us updates, especially for those of us in Nigeria, on what is the latest on childhood immunization. And it is important because things change from time to time. I remember when we started ATP, there were some vaccines that were not even part of the program, and people have to pay for them. But now, with all the advocacy, with all the support of the Nigerian government and the Pediatric Association of Nigeria and other international bodies, UNICEF, Gavi, and the rest, those vaccines are now part of our routine immunizations, what you get for free. Of course, we're still working on getting more, but every year our immunization program keeps expanding and for our children, and that is so good to know. So today I'm going to be giving us a more updates on what has happened with immunization in Nigeria and trying to encourage us to make sure that we take our children for this immunization. So let's start. First, what is immunization? So, immunization means administration of vaccines to children, even adults. Immunizations for adults as well. But of course, as a pediatrician, I'm going to be focusing on my children. It's just about protecting our children from diseases by already giving them what we call vaccines. So, it's a way of boosting the immunity of the children so that when they are now exposed to these diseases or this germ, they are not going to be sick from them and they can actually not have any illness because they already have been protected. In those days, many years ago, a lot of our children die from what we call vaccine preventable diseases. Most of these diseases were killer diseases. We're talking about things like tuberculosis, things like measles, even some of them that are not killer diseases, they can actually cause severe disability. We're talking about things like polio, and these children will not be able to walk because of the paralysis of their legs. But with advance in technology and research and science, we have been able to develop what we call vaccines. And when we give children vaccines, then the children are protected against these killer diseases. And as a result, a lot of children are now living and a lot of children are now walking who are no longer paralyzed because of vaccines. So immunization is one of the public health victories. It's one of the successes that we've encountered in health, because now a lot of children are living, a lot of children are not dying, and a lot of children are not disabled because of these terrible diseases, because we have vaccines that can protect our children. So the process of boosting the immunity of children to be able to fight against infection by giving them things we call vaccines is what we call immunization. I'm also going to define what we call vaccination. So, vaccination is not exactly the same thing as immunization. Vaccination means we give the vaccines to the children. However, we need the child to respond to the vaccine. We need the child to develop these agents we call immunoglobulins or antibodies that can fight against the infection, and that is when the child is now fully immunized. It is so important for us to differentiate this, because sometimes people get vaccines and the children still are not immunized. They did not develop antibodies, either because the vaccine is wrong or the vaccine is already ineffective due to poor storage or lack break in the cold chain, or the vaccine was not administered properly, or we didn't get enough doses of the vaccine. So these are the things I'm going to be addressing one by one. So it is not enough for us to just take the children to get the vaccines. We need to also make sure that it is done correctly by the right person with the right vaccine, so that the children would develop the immunity, so that when the children are now exposed against these infections, then the children will not be sick, or if at all they are sick, it will be very mild and they're not going to die or develop severe disability from these illnesses. So that is the difference between immunization and vaccination. And of course, the key thing that is central to all this is the vaccine. So, what is a vaccine? So, vaccines are actually either live organisms that have been modified, or parts of an organism, or even parts of the products, maybe the toxins they produce, that we have kind of modified in the lab, and which we will now introduce into the human body. And when we introduce this vaccine, which is a modified organism or products from the organism, the germ that normally causes the disease that we're trying to protect against, the child develop a response, but they don't develop a disease, because we've already modified the organism to make it into a vaccine. So we get a response, immune response, but without the disease. However, when the child is not even exposed to the original illness, because they've already had that initial experience through the vaccine, they develop more response, and that will keep them protected from developing the disease and the or even the severe form of the disease. So that is what vaccines are. So like I said, development of vaccines is a great breakthrough for those of us in pediatrics, because now a lot of children, millions and millions of children, are being protected from conditions. We don't want the children to be sick first, and then we're not sure whether they're going to survive or die. Now we can actually protect them ahead of the disease by giving them vaccines. So that is why we have a whole week devoted in April to immunization. And all we do during that week is to increase awareness and promote immunization. I know one of the battles we are facing now are the people that are coming out to say a lot of things about immunization, and a lot of parents are now beginning to get scared of taking their children for immunizations. I'm going to address all these myths about immunization down the line. And because of that, even in countries like Europe and in regions like Europe, most of the countries where some of these infectious diseases are long forgotten, we are now beginning to see outbreaks. Currently in the UK now, in Wales, we have an outbreak of measles, because a lot of children, stop taking the measles vaccines, or they believe, oh, maybe it's no longer necessary, or some are worried about MMR and autism, and because of that, it is causing these diseases to come back. And unfortunately, more children can die from these preventable diseases. So today, I just want to encourage us not to fall for these lies and myths, but rather to make sure that we take our children for immunization. So as a Nigerian pediatrician, I'm going to use the Nigerian program on immunization as a template to discuss the vaccines, preventable diseases, and the vaccine schedule that we have. Of course, different countries have different immunization schedule. This is because in different countries there are diseases that are really the major issues. There are some diseases that cut across all the world, whether UK, Africa, or any US, anywhere you are in the world. There are certain vaccines that we all give, but there are certain diseases that are not an issue in some countries. For example, malaria is an issue for us in Nigeria, and now we are luckily going to be introducing malaria vaccine very soon. Whereas in some countries it is now, so they're not going to be bothered about malaria vaccine. In UK, for example, they do a lot of flu vaccine because flu is an issue for them. But we in Nigeria, or most of Africa, we don't have flu, so we're not going to be focusing on flu vaccine. So the reason why I'm saying this is that some people worry about uh, why are some vaccines not part of our home? Why are they in other people's zone? There are some vaccines, there are some diseases that cut across all regions. So almost all regions will give vaccines for polio, for measles, for meningitis. But there are certain conditions, like maybe like tuberculosis, malaria, that may be regional. So something we would deal with in Africa, but maybe it may not be an issue for those in America or Europe, for example, and so they may not have it. So it is important, and because the world is becoming a global village, and some children are born in Nigeria, then they end up in the UK, or some are born in America, they come back to Nigeria. So we need to all understand what is going on. But just to all lay the principle that there are different immunization schedule, and not only that, there are different vaccines that each country gives. However, the timing also differs. So there are some vaccines, for example, in Nigeria, we tend to give our BCG at birth because tuberculosis is endemic and people are exposed right from the beginning. Whereas in certain places, they give BCG, but they don't give it at birth. They give it at in teenage years. So because that is when their own population gets exposed to tuberculosis. So I just want us to understand its minor differences, but the principle is still the same. Each country will look at what are the diseases that we are battling with, which of them have vaccines that can protect our children, our adults against them, and then they come up with their own immunization schedule. And of course, though immunizations are the vaccines are usually given free, it is actually not free. Okay, there is no free lunch even in Freetown. So it is very important because sometimes parents sometimes we don't value these vaccines because we think, oh, we just get it for free, but the government is paying for it. Somebody has to pay for the vaccines. They are really expensive, and that is how you know, because for some of us that want to take some of those extra vaccines that the government have decided that we don't have the money to pay for right now, we know how expensive it is. So we should be grateful to our government, that the fact that they are able to give us these vaccines for free, they have to pay for it. And the minimum we can do is to make sure that we actually take our children for this immunization. And despite that the vaccines is free, our immunization coverage, when we say immunization coverage, we're talking about how many people who are supposed to have vaccines and that actually take them. In fact, by the time we're getting to the third lots of vaccines, the coverage is usually low. Most of them are even less than 50%, which is really terrible, which means that these children are not protected against these diseases, and these children can have it. So in Nigeria, for example, we've had outbreak of diphtheria, we've had outbreak of meningitis and all that, because sometimes people don't take these vaccines. So it is so important for us to make sure that we take our children for immunization. Again, I'm talking about updates in childhood immunization, and I'm using the Nigeria Program on Immunization as a template since most of my audience are in Nigeria. So let's just refresh our memory about the vaccines and the vaccine preventable diseases and the timing. The number of questions we get on HCP about people saying my child is 6 weeks old, and or my child is 10 weeks old and the child was given the 6 weeks vaccine, or my child is 14 weeks old was given a 9 months vaccine. I'm always very shocked. I'm always very amused, if I can put it that way, about that. We as parents, we need to know the vaccines our children should be taking. And when we go to the hospital, we should know what is given to the children. We should know the names of the vaccines. We have no excuse for not knowing. We should know the name of the vaccines. We should know the timing of the vaccines. We should also know what diseases these vaccines are supposed to protect against. So that is why I'm going to give us a refresher. And we all have these immunization cards, and all this information are in this immunization card. And this is why we promote female education. Why do you think we promote female education? Why do you think female education is important? And it's part of what we call childhood survival strategies, because we know that mothers must be able to read, mother must be able to know things. So we have no excuse. Somebody was like, oh, we forgot to take my child for the 10 weeks immunization. I'm like, no, you shouldn't be forgetting things like your child's immunization. These are things you should have. And luckily these days we have all our smartphones, we have reminders, we have calendars. We have no excuse for forgetting to take our children for immunization, and we have no excuse for not knowing. Anyway, I'm going to be here today to give you a refresher training on the vaccines, well, don't worry about the dosage. That is for the professionals, but at least you should know the names of the vaccine, the disease they protect against, and when they should be taken. And all you need to do is to go grab that your immunization card. It is actually a very important document. It is something we should be reading. It is not just only for the nurses and the doctors to just sign and say you've taken this vaccine. We should be reading it. We should be seeing all those information in our card. That is why you have a record that you take home, and that is why we also have a record that we keep in the hospitals. So let's just quickly go through a reminder. I'm not sure whether we can see this very well, but I will post a copy of it on our Facebook group. But this is just to remind us of the routine program on immunization. It's a little bit too tiny, but I will just tell us what they are. So the Nigerian program on immunization starts from birth. So immediately the baby is born, we are supposed to start giving them the immunization. So there are vaccines that we give at birth, and there are vaccines we will give at 6 weeks, at 10 weeks, at 14 weeks, at 6 months, at 9 months, at 12 months, at 15 months, and at 9 years. And now I understand that sometimes it can be quite challenging for parents, but that's why you have your immunization card so that you can remember. Okay. As at last time, I'm sure last month, last year, when we were doing this immunization week, we were talking about immunization program in Nigeria ending at around 15 months. So most of you would think, oh, it ends at 15 months. There was a time actually that our immunization program was ending at 9 months. Now we've moved beyond, which is why we have to do this refresher uh, um, ACP hour on immunization, because immunization is one of the most dynamic of all the things we always talk about with parents. So there was a time it was ending at 9 months. Now we went to 15 months. Now the latest updates, which is what I want you to take away, is that immunization does not end at 15 months now. It's going to end at 9 years. Okay, so we've introduced additional vaccine to the Nigerian program on immunization, and we now have a vaccine that ends as 9 years, and that is the human papilloma virus HPV vaccine. We've introduced it into the Nigerian program. So please don't forget that your children's immunization do not end at 9 months or 15 months. We now also give vaccine at 9 years. Okay, so let's start. Which one do we give at birth? Usually we give 3. And in addition to the vaccine, there are other things we also give, like the vitamin A. Strictly speaking, it is not immunization, strictly speaking, but because we also give it, so I will also talk about it so that we remember it. But strictly speaking, it is not immunization. So the first vaccine every Nigerian child should take immediately that child is born is the BCG vaccine. The name is BCG. Okay, you don't have to worry about the the full meaning of BCG, Basil Calmette Garin, but don't worry about those jargons. It's just stick with BCG. And BCG is given at birth. It is an injection. Okay, that's another thing. There are different kind of vaccines. There are vaccines we give as an injection. There are vaccines we give into the mouth. Okay, there are vaccines that we will give into the skin, and there are vaccines that we will give into the muscles. This is very important because remember what I said. If we don't just want to have vaccination and not immunization, we have to make sure that we take the vaccines correctly. So something that should be given into the mouth should not be given as injection, and something that should be given into injection into the skin should not be given into the muscle, or else we've lost the vaccine. And BCG is one of those vaccines that has to be given into the skin. It's given into the skin. It is just one dose. That there are vaccines that we give just once, and there are vaccines we give 2-3 times. There are some that we even give what we call booster doses. So I don't want to confuse us, but because of the different nature of vaccines, so that is what informs that. But luckily, BCG vaccine, it protects against tuberculosis, what we call the severe form of tuberculosis, and we give it at birth. It is given into the skin. So when they give our baby BCG vaccine, you should see the skin, you should see the vaccine under the skin. It will look like orange skin. You will see all the pores of the baby's skin. If you don't see it when the vaccine was given, it means it was given too deep into the muscle and it may not work. So the BCG vaccine is given at birth, is given into the skin. It's an injection, usually given on the arm. usually given on the arm, and usually we use the left arm. Okay, but some people have asked me, oh, they gave my baby on the right. So it's okay, it's fine. We just try to, it doesn't mean that anything will happen if it's given on the right or instead of the left. We just try to remember, like when we are checking for BCG scar, so that everybody just go check on the left, so people won't start looking everywhere. So that's why we just say, okay, let's all agree to do it on the left. Okay, and if this is going to happen, left hand is usually not dominant for most people, but otherwise, whether they give it on the right or the left, it doesn't really matter. The most important that the child takes the vaccine. Okay, but it is a BCG vaccine. It is one vaccine. We don't need like booster doses of BCG, and it must be given at birth. Unfortunately, BCG vaccine is one of those vaccines that what we call multi-dose via. In other words, when we want to give BCG vaccine, we have to, it has when you open a bottle of it, you can give up to like 10 or 20 of it from one bottle. And because of that, if we open one bottle for every child, it will be wasting the vaccine. So because of that, many of our health centers don't give BCG vaccine every day, because if you have only one child, you open one, once you give it, you have to throw away the rest, and that's a waste. So what they try to do is to pool the children. So we wait until we have at least 10 or more children together. So most people tend to give BCG vaccine once a month. So if you are lucky and the day your child was born is the day they are giving the BCG vaccine, you will likely get your vaccine the same day as birth. But most often than not, you will not get the BCG vaccine on the day the child is born, because most centers have a day in once a month, or once, usually most time once a month, where all the children that have been born in that month will come together, and then they will get the BCG vaccine, because it is a multi-dose vaccine. So once we open one bottle, we want to use it all. And vaccines are very, you have to be very careful how you keep them. You can't open it, use it, and go and keep it again. You have to open it, you must finish it. So that is the thing. So BCG vaccine ideally should be given at birth, but because of this scenario I just gave now, most of the time we don't end up giving it at birth. But make sure you take it as soon as possible. Make sure you take it as soon as possible. Within the first 1 month, you must take BCG vaccine. Notwithstanding, if you have not taken BCG vaccine, you can always go and take it. So there's always what we call catch-up immunization. So for those of you who may be, for one very important reason or one flimsy reason, you've missed any of those vaccines, BCG vaccine, you can always take it. Always, even as an adult, even if you've never taken it, you can still take it. So please, you can always go back for BCG vaccine. So we give BCG vaccine at birth. The second vaccine we also give at birth is oral polio. Most of us know oral polio. Luckily for us, we have been successful with oral polio, and we are soon going to stop oral polio. We're going to change to the injectable polio. We've actually introduced the two together, but very soon we're gradually going to phase out the oral polio, and we will only be doing the injectable polio. So the oral polio is in the mouth. That is why the word oral is with it. Oral means mouth. So we give 2 drops in the mouth, and it's preferably given, you don't breastfeed your child immediately after giving the polio vaccine, so that the child doesn't vomit it and all that. So that is the second vaccine that is given at birth. The third one is hepatitis B0. Now, when we put the word 0, 1, 2, 3 after a vaccine, because some parents ask me that question and they worry. That some people say, oh, they gave me the vaccine at 10 weeks, that my baby should have, they gave the same vaccine at 6 weeks for my baby at 10 weeks. And mom are really worried about that. So it is the same vaccine. When we say oral polio 0, oral polio 1, oral polio 2, oral polio 3, it's still the same oral polio. There's no difference between oral polio 0 and oral polio 1. Okay, the 0, 1, 2, 3 is just number. It's just to help us know how many the child has taken. That okay, oral polio 0 is the first one, oral polio 2 1, OPV1 is the second one, OPV2 is the third one, OPV3 is the fourth one. It is just for the professionals to know that your baby has taken the first, the second, the third, the fourth, but it's still the exact same vaccine. So you don't need to panic. So don't say, oh, what they gave me at 6 weeks is also what they gave me at 10 weeks. It's the same vaccine. So the 1 or 2 or 3 is just to help us count how many of the doses the child has taken. So nobody should panic about the zero. But we usually use that for vaccines that we give multiple doses. So BCG doesn't have 0 or 1 because it's only one BCG for life. But for oral polio, the DPT, the pentas, they have 1, 2, 3 because there are multiple of them that your child has to take. So oral polio prevents, just like the name suggests, against poliomyelitis. HPV, HBV, because there's also HPV. Okay, so that is the HPV is hepatitis B virus vaccine, and that protects against hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is one terrible virus that can cause what we call liver disease, and it can cause liver cancer down the line. So HBV, I just want to write it out, is for hepatitis B, and it protects against hepatitis. All right, so those are the vaccines that your baby must take at birth. Now, sometimes some babies don't get the hepatitis B at birth. If your baby missed hepatitis B at birth, then that baby have to take within 2 weeks. Okay, the baby has to take it within 2 weeks. If after 2 weeks the baby has not taken hepatitis B0, HPV 0, then that is gone. But not to worry, your baby is going to take hepatitis B in at 6 weeks. So, but we have to give it, and the hepatitis B is given into the thigh. So hepatitis B is given in the thigh. The BCG is given in the left arm, and the oral polio is given in the mouth. Okay, so those are the first set of vaccines your baby must take at birth. Then we move on to 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and 14 weeks. The reason why I put the three of them together is that those three vaccines, they are the same kind of vaccines that your child will take at those 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and 14 weeks. So we give what we call the penta vaccine. Now, penta vaccine means, it's just the word penta. Penta means 5, okay? Pentavalent vaccine, or just penta for short. Um, it contains 5 vaccines. And what are those 5 vaccines that you have in Penta? You have what we call the DPT, diphtheria. We have what we call the pertussis vaccine. You also have what we call the tetanus, and we also have what we call the HIB, Haemophilus influenza type B vaccine, and you also have what we call the hepatitis B vaccine. So those are the 5 vaccines in Penta vaccine. So I'm just going to write it. We have the D, the P, the T, the HIB, and the HPV. uh, those are the vaccines that you have in Penta. So, and these vaccines will give 3 doses of the Penta. So we give one at 6 weeks, we give one at 10 weeks, and we give one at 14 weeks. So in addition to the Penta, we also give the pneumococcal vaccine. The pneumococcal vaccine it protects against this bacterial infection that is called pneumococca is the name of that bacteria, and it can cause pneumonia, it can cause meningitis, it can cause serious infections. So pneumococcal vaccine is one of those vaccines that we didn't have for a long time, but now we do have pneumococcal vaccine. And we also give oral polio at 6 weeks. So there are about 7 vaccines your baby is going to take at 6 weeks. So we give the Penta itself is 5-in-1 vaccines, and it is an injection. We also give the pneumococcal vaccine. It's also an injection. Then we give the oral polio. We also give oral rotavirus. Okay, in fact, it's actually 8 vaccines your baby is going to take at 6 weeks. So we give 2 orals and 2 injections. In fact, 3 injections, because we're trying to introduce the IPV, that is injectable polio. So the Penta on the thigh, the pneumococcal on the thigh, and also the IPV, the injectable polio one on the thigh, and then we give 2 oral. So 3 injections, 2 oral. The oral are the oral polio and the um, rotavirus. So rotavirus vaccine protects against rotavirus infection. Rotavirus tends to cause diarrhea, is the commonest cause of diarrhea in children under the age of 1, really. So that is why we give it. Oral polio will prevent against polio. The penta, the diphtheria vaccine protects against diphtheria, which is a very serious respiratory infection. Pertussis also prevents against pertussis or whooping, so-called whooping cough. And then the tetanus protect against tetanus. We all know what tetanus is. And of course, we have Haemophilus influenza. Type B is a bacterial infection that can cause meningitis, pneumonia, and other infections. So the HIB will protect against that. And then the hepatitis B will also protect against hepatitis B virus, whereas the pneumococcal also protects against pneumococcal infection, which can cause pneumonia, pneumonia, meningitis, and other serious infections. So those are the vaccines that your baby will take at 6 weeks. So 6 weeks is pretty quite a hectic time for babies. And then we go to 10 weeks. At 10 weeks again, baby will now take Penta 2. Okay, the baby will take Penta 2 and as well as the pneumococcal 2 and also oral polio and rota. So the only thing the baby is not taking this time around between 6 weeks and the 6 weeks and the 10 weeks is that the baby doesn't take injectable polio, but it's exactly the same thing. The Penta 1 at 6 weeks, Penta 2 at 6 weeks, pneumococcal 1 at 6 weeks, pneumococcal 2 at 10 weeks, and then oral polio 1 at 6 weeks, oral polio 2 at 10 weeks, or rotavirus 1 at 6 weeks, and rotavirus 2 at 10 weeks. So the only thing mixing at 10 weeks is injectable polio, because we only give 2 of the injectable polios. We give 1 at 6 weeks and 1 at 14 weeks. Then 14 weeks is exactly the same thing as well, but this time around we are just going to do almost exact same thing we did at 6 weeks. So we're going to get Penta 3 and pneumococcal 3, and then we're also getting oral polio 3 and rotavirus 3, and then we also get injectable polio. So those are the things that our children will take at at 14 weeks. So those ones are really, that is where majority of the vaccines are taken: 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and 14. So please don't forget those immunization at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks. And that is the one that most parents tend to forget, because we just, maybe because the babies are getting bigger now, so many things in our mind. But please, these vaccines are so many, and it is important that the children should not forget, or we should not forget to take our children for them. Of course, at 6 months, we don't have any immunization at 6 months, but we do give oral vitamin A. So please, even though there's no immunization, you must go for oral vitamin A at 6 months. After that, then the next time will be 9 months. And 9 months, there are 3 vaccines and another vitamin A that the baby has to take. So at 9 months, we give measles 1. We give measles 1. We also give yellow fever, and we also give meningitis vaccine. Again, when we started ATP, we usually don't give measles twice. We only give it once at 9 months, but now we give measles twice. The first one is given at 9 months, and the second one at 15 months. Before, we don't have meningitis vaccine, but now we do have meningitis vaccine as part of the national program that we can get for free, and it is given at 9 months. So it is not just measles and yellow fever like before. Now we give both measles, yellow fever, and meningitis vaccine at 9 months, and we also give them the vitamin A vaccine. So that is what the children will take at 9 months. Of course, measles protect the children against measles. Measles is one of those childhood killer. It can cause pneumonia, it can cause blindness. And why we also give vitamin A is also to protect our children against vitamin A deficiency. And vitamin A deficiency is the leading cause or preventable blindness, blindness that can be prevented just by giving oral vitamin A. So we give all our children vitamin A at 6 months and at 12 months. In some countries, they don't do that because it's not an issue for them, or maybe because they expect their children to eat good food that has vitamin A. But in Nigeria, we just make sure to be double sure we give all our children vitamin A at 6 months and at 12 months. So 9 months we give measles, yellow fever, and meningitis. Sorry, the second dose of vitamin A is at 12 months. And then at 15 months we give the second dose of measles. Okay. And then the last update, why we're having these updates again, is the HPV, human papilloma virus, which I've done a presentation about when I was talking about cervical cancer prevention. So this is now being introduced to our immunization schedule, and we do give it at 9 years, and there are about 2 doses as well. There are different types, but I think the government has just introduced the one that you just get 1 dose for now, but we'll keep you updated whether you're going to be getting just only 1 dose or you're going to be getting 2 doses. But for now, just remember at 9 years, our children needs to go for the HPV vaccine. All right, so I've just run through all the immunization schedule for Nigeria. This is what we call routine program on immunization. Routine means this is what all the children should take from birth to 9 years. So please, let's ensure we take our children so that our children will be protected against all diseases. Now, there are sometimes we give additional vaccines, and we call those ones supplementary vaccines. So supplementary vaccines are vaccines that will give on top of the routine one. And why do we do that? Sometimes there is an outbreak, something is going on, and we just want to make sure we quickly boost all the immunity of our children. For example, we've been working so hard to kick polio out, and we're almost there. And so you will see people coming to the churches, to the mosques, and giving all the children under the age of 5. We just give them oral polio. We just drop it in their mouths. So some mothers will say, but my baby has already taken polio. He has immunization card, already taken polio. The school will write to you and say, they are coming to give all the children measles again. And you're like, my child has taken it before. Please take them in addition. Okay, take those extra ones. Those extra ones are what we call supplementary immunization. We give it in addition to the routine immunization, and we normally give it when we are trying to deal with maybe an outbreak that is ongoing or that is about to happen. So for example, every 2 years we have measles outbreak. So sometimes we do go around and do additional measles immunization for all children below the age of 5, whether they've taken the routine one or not. We give them extra. We want to quickly boost their immunity. So there's nothing wrong with taking those extra immunization. So don't say, oh, my baby has taken the routine one, why should my baby taking the extra one? Please take the extra ones. All right, take them when they knock on your gates, when they come to the school, when they come to churches. Please make sure you give your children those booster doses of immunization, because we are trying at that time. In sometimes we go to the northern part of the countries and we give all the children the meningitis vaccine, because people in the north, in the what we call it Sahara Belt area, the Sudan area, they are prone to having meningitis outbreak. So sometimes the government would just go around. I remember when I went to serve in the north, so youth corps, all of us were given the meningitis vaccine in addition to whatever we've taken before. So those are supplementary immunization. So please make sure you take them. They do not cause any harm. Okay, some others wonder, is my child not taking too much of the vaccines? Okay, let me just reassure you, taking extra doses of vaccine does not harm your children. Okay, it does not harm. If at all, it may just be a waste of vaccine, but sometimes it actually boosts the immunity the more. So it's better to take immunization doses, take extra or take excess dose than not to take at all. Okay, if you take excess dose, it doesn't do any harm. It doesn't harm the child, doesn't harm you, and it's not like medication like taking too much of paracetamol causing liver damage. No, vaccines are not like that, so it's not going to cause any harm to your child. All right. Whereas if you don't take the booster and the immunity starts to wane, and then that child may still be at risk. It's just the same thing with tetanus. Most of us have taken tetanus immunization as part of our routine immunization. But if we are exposed to, maybe we have a wound or something, we still give you a booster dose just to booster your immunity, because it's easier to give you a booster dose of tetanus toxoid costing less than maybe 100 naira or 1,000 naira than to deal with tetanus. Because if you don't have tetanus and you have to start taking diazepam, take hospital admission, you're going to be spending hundreds of thousands of naira, which you could have prevented with something less than maybe 100 naira. So we give booster immunization, supplementary immunization to boost immunity, because sometimes immunity can wane over time. If, for example, I did it in Nigeria, we should also be given all these booster, DPT. They do it in some other countries, which we are not doing right now, but the Pediatric Association of Nigeria, PAN, I'm sure we're working so hard so that our children can start taking those extra boosters as well. Extra boosters for hepatitis B, boosters for DPT. We don't have them, but if you live in a country where they give what we call preschool boosters, please make sure you take them for your children. We're working so hard, and I think we should be grateful. Like I said, I've been doing this for over almost 9 years now, and I have seen the progression from when we don't have pneumococcal to when we don't have rota, but now we have rota, we have pneumococcal, now we have HPV. So I'm very, very optimistic that very soon we're going to get those booster doses. So please make sure you take your children for them, and make sure you take the routine, and make sure you take the supplementary. And the supplementary do not exclude the routine. So the fact that your child, they've given you oral polio in the market, in the school, you should still take your routine one. Okay. And if your child are just taking a routine yesterday and they're giving the extra tomorrow, don't worry, just take it. It's better to be safe than to be sorry. Now, there are also some vaccines I know that we have not mentioned in this list that have shown us. This is a Nigerian list, but they are available in the country as well. So it is okay for your children to take them. I actually got an inbox message from a parent just before I came to do this recording, and she's given us a list of vaccines, and she was like, our child has been told to take all those vaccines, or else the child will not be admitted to the crèche. And she was actually asking for financial support to be able to, take those vaccines. Number one, I was like, number one, you don't have to pay for vaccines in Nigeria. All vaccines are free. All the vaccines I've mentioned, all these vaccines that are listed here, they are free. Go to any health center, go to any government hospital, they all have immunization posts. Go get your vaccines, they are free. FOC, free of charge. Nobody should charge you for immunization. You don't have to pay anything. And some people say, I don't like going to health center. Do you know what? Immunizations are actually better in the health centers and the government hospitals. I'll tell you why. Immunizations have to be kept at certain temperature. If not, you're just going to get vaccines and not immunization. Remember what I started with? So immunization, the vaccines are so sensitive. They have to be protected. They have to be kept at the right temperature, right from the place where they are manufactured to the time when we put it in the child's body, whether it's oral, whether it's injection, the temperature must be maintained. And one of the challenges we face in countries like Nigeria is our refrigeration is quite difficult. Electricity is not always stable. And but for in the health centers, they don't keep the immunization, so they get it from the vaccines laboratory exactly that same day. So because of that, the chances that the cold chain are maintained are actually better off with the government hospitals and health centers, because they go straight to get it the day they're about to administer it. So the cold chain is not broken. Whereas some so-called private hospitals may do, they may try their best, but we all know that some may not be standard enough. and they may not have maintained cold chain, because the way you maintain cold chain, you have to be checking the temperature of your fridge. It has to be a certain minus something. You have to check it in the morning, check it at, you must make sure that the temperature never drops never rises above certain level and all that. So, and government centers, they keep to that standard. So we are always sure the vaccines there are legit. Okay. For some privates, some of them, not all, I know, so some do cut corners and they don't keep those vaccines well. And if they just open the fridge and bring out vaccines for you, is probably not properly kept. Usually, most standard hospitals, like private hospitals, we have a dedicated freezer or fridge where they keep their vaccines. So it's not something they just open anyhow every time. So please go to the health center, take your vaccines, and they're free. However, there are certain vaccines that the government have not included, but they are helpful, they are useful for your children to take as well. I will mention a couple of them. So I would say, if you have the money, feel free to take those vaccines. If you have the money, feel free to buy and take them. All vaccines are good, but you don't have to kill yourself. But trust me, the ones the government have covered are the most important vaccines. All the important vaccines are already covered by the national program, by this routine program. All the very essential vaccines are covered. So if you have extra, if you have money, yes, you can take things like chickenpox vaccine. You can buy it by yourself. It is okay. If not, your child will have chickenpox. But chickenpox for us, it's not something that should kill, except the child is immunocompromised. Most people will have chickenpox and they'll be fine. So, but if you have money and you don't want your child to go through chickenpox, you can take the chickenpox vaccine. Now, I see some other vaccines that some private hospitals are always recommending for parents to take, and most of those vaccines are not even recommended for children. Unfortunately, you know, in private, people just say, oh, it's a vaccine. Okay, they just want you to buy and buy. It's just a sale thing. But there are some of them that I usually frown at. Number one, I see a lot of people saying flu vaccine, even for children 1 year old. Even in UK, where they have flu, where flu is the issue for them, and they always give flu vaccine, they don't even give it to their children below that age. They don't tend to give to their children 1 year, 2 years. They don't give them flu vaccines at that age. So please don't take flu vaccines in Nigeria for your 1 year old. It's not necessary. It's abuse of waste of resources. Okay, and we don't even have flu as an issue in Nigeria. Another one that I tend to see is the typhoid fever vaccine. Please don't give it to children. It is not recommended for people to take typhoid fever vaccine. Typhoid fever vaccine is meant only for travelers going to areas where there is typhoid fever endemicity, but not for children. People in a area, you're not supposed to be taking typhoid fever vaccine. You're supposed to pay attention to hygiene, wash your hands, boil your drinking water. That is how you protect your child against typhoid fever, not by giving them typhoid fever vaccine. It is meant for travelers, not for children routinely. Another one is the hepatitis A. A lot of people also take hepatitis A. The same thing. Hepatitis A is also an infection that is uh, orophycal kind of transmission. So hygiene is important. Again, recommended for travelers who are going to a particular area where they'll never be sure of their hygiene and all that, but not for routinely for children. So please, all this flu vaccine, typhoid fever vaccine, hepatitis A, we don't need to be giving our children those vaccines. They are not recommended for routine immunization in children. So please stop that. All right. So, but if you want to take MMR, if you want to take the chickenpox vaccine, you can take them. The MMR is okay, but we're already giving measles vaccine, and we give to those on measles. And measles is the most important of the MMR, though there's mumps and rubella, but measles is the most important. But if you have money, you can take the MMR. It's okay. If you have money, you can take the chickenpox. We're already giving the meningitis vaccine. I know there are different types. We are giving meningitis A vaccine, but feel free to if you want to take the other ones, it's okay, but you don't have to stress yourself if you don't have the money. All right, so that is just to encourage us for the vaccines that are what we call non-MPI, the ones that are not in the Nigerian program on immunization. But the ones that are free, take those ones first. If you have money, take the extra. If you don't have money, just let it be. So I've been talking about immunization, and I think the most important thing is for us to take the immunization. That is the most important thing. Okay, immunization can have side effects. Usually, most of the immunization can give fever. You can give paracetamol. I've been seeing a lot of misinformation about don't give paracetamol after immunization because it will make it ineffective. That is not true. That is a lie. If your child has fever, give paracetamol. If the place appears swollen or red, you can apply ice pack and it will go down. Please don't rub immunization area. Don't apply kerosene. Don't massage it or anything. Just apply ice pack intermittently. It will go. If your child start having like what look like convulsion, you have to go to the hospital. But these immunization side effects are so rare, but it can happen. So, but just go to the hospital. And also, some people spread lies about immunization causing autism and all that. That is also not true. Immunization does not cause autism. It does not cause developmental delay in our children. So I think my time is up, but if you have any questions still about immunization, feel free to go to Ask the Pediatrician Facebook group, post your questions there, and my colleagues will be there to answer your questions on immunization. But more importantly, and more than anything else, please take your children for immunization. And if you have mixed some immunization, most of them you can still take them. For children less under the age of 5, you can still take your immunization. There are vaccines that, like for example, rota. If you don't take rota after the age of 1 year, is really not necessary anymore. But majority of the vaccines like hepatitis B, the pneumococcal, the DPTs, the pentas, the BCG, you can always go for them, even if you have forgotten them before. Feel free to go back and take them. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week, where we'll be talking about another important topic that has to do with the health of our children. Well, remember, take immunization. Immunization saves life. And have a wonderful day. It is bye for me. Bye-bye.
Are you a mother, father, or you are involved in caring for children? If yes, then listen to Ask the Pediatricians every Thursday by 10 a.m. for insightful discussion on popular child health topics such as dangerous child health practices, immunization, infant feeding, developmental milestones, and so much more. You also get to ask questions on these topics and listen to answers to real-life child health issues by a pediatrician. Ask the Paediatricians Foundation is devoted to health education and information of parents and caregivers of children in the community to support you in raising healthy children. Don't miss Ask the Paediatricians with Dr. Gbemisola because it's informative, educative, and interactive. Ask the Paediatricians Hour, the program for caring parents.